The trade deadline is approaching this coming week, and the hot stove should be heating up fairly soon. Who should be buying? Who should be selling? What deals have happened? What deals could happen? And what deals should happen before this Tuesday's deadline? With all that coming up, let's talk baseball. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you may be listening. I'm your host, Tom Scholes, and this is Let's Talk Baseball, a baseball podcast with a bit of a British edge to it, as you can tell in my voice. Today's episode is a fairly straightforward one. It's focusing on trades. Everybody loves trades. Everybody loves the rumours of trades. It's one of them things that crosses every sport, whether it be the NBA trade deadline, NFL trades, deadline day in football. It's always that time of the season where everyone kind of gets a better picture of what's happening. It's the time of the year where the teams who are contending go into a buying mode and make moves to secure their playoff place, and it's where the sellers, the teams that haven't performed as well as they perhaps should have, or the teams that are in a rebuild mode, kind of try to get the most value for what they've got. They try to bring in as many prospects as they can. They've realised the season is down the pan. They've got some expiring contracts they want to get rid of. They're happy to take a bit of money for them as well. It's where they essentially write off this season and look ahead to the coming off season, the coming season next year, and try to make a head start on that. A few trades have already taken place this week, as Ahmed Rosario has gone to the Dodgers with Noah Syndergaard going in the opposite direction out to the Cleveland Guardians. David Robertson has gone to the Marlins from the Mets. That is something I don't think anybody would have expected at the start of this season. If you'd have said to somebody that the Mets are going to be selling to the buying Marlins at the trade deadline, I think people would have looked at you and they probably would have laughed at you, or they would have been like, no, I just can't see that happening. But it has happened, and I think that kind of sums up where the Mets have been this season. There's a couple of trade rumours around them regarding Justin Verlander, which we may get into later on, which I think is quite interesting, because it's one of those things that who's going to take him? Who would need him? But that's something to get into another time. Another deal that has taken place is first baseman Carlos Santana is going to the Brewers as the Brew Crew look to seal the National League Central. He came in from the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's a top player. And that is a team that I don't think they'll win the World Series, but I think they're going to be quite entertaining to watch when the season gets going. Like when the playoff race kicks in and the race for first in that division between them and the Cubs hots up, I think that'll be quite a fun division to watch. The Angels have announced that they'll be keeping Shohei Ohtani as they look to make a playoff push. I will go into this into later on in this, but I actually think this is the right move to make, because yes, you will have an ungodly amount of prospects and an amazing amount of assets to play with in that trade if you were to get rid of Ohtani, but this is a historic player. You do not willingly let this man go. If they win the World Series, I highly doubt it. There's a high chance they don't even make the playoffs, let alone anything else, the World Series by that matter. But if there is a world where Mike Trout comes back fit, healthy, and he's firing, the bullpen sorts itself out, and Ohtani keeps being his historic, amazing self, there'll be a team that no one wants to play. There'll be a team that will be fun to watch as a neutral, but you will not want to come up against them. Will they make it? I think the American League is so weird at the moment that there is no better opportunity, given the situation they find themselves in with Ohtani's contract and the fact he's almost, I would say, certainly unlikely to re-sign with them. I think it's I think it's the right move to make, but I think that might be a conversation for another time down the line. And the Padres as well are another team that I think I want to watch in this deadline, because they've said they're not going to get rid of Blake Snell, but they haven't exactly shut down the idea of moving Juan Soto and getting a haul in for him. If they're in a position where they're not going to get any better, where they're not going to improve and they're not going to get into the playoffs, they'll look at who they can get the most for, and I think they might take it. But the place we'll start is a place I know well, my New York Yankees, because I think they find themselves in a bit of a strange predicament. In any other division, they'd be buyers. They'd be where the Brewers are, for example. They'd be looking to make deals to shore up their lineup, to ensure they win the division and get their playoff place sorted. But because the AL East is so strong, they are bottom of the AL East. However, they are only 2.5 games back. Some of the fans on social media are calling for them to be sellers. Now, I disagree with that, simply because who are you going to sell? You look at the 3 stars they have, or the 4 big free agents they've brought in recent years. Carlos Rodon, no, just been brought in. He's not going anywhere. Garrett Cole is not going anywhere. Giancarlo Stanton is not going anywhere. Aaron Judge, there's more chance of me being put into the lineup and hitting a home run than Aaron Judge is to be traded. It's just not going to happen. And anybody with a brain knows that's going to happen. So you look at their lineup and you look at the people they have in that squad, and the same people that are calling them to be sellers, to blow it up and move on from the deadline, are also the ones that probably complain that there isn't enough talent in the lineup and that all the players are terrible. So which one is it? Are the players terrible, or are they assets that should be moved on? And if they are assets to be moved on, who are they? The only one I can think of that would bring in any kind of value is Gleyber Torres, and if you remove him from the team and you trade him away, then the only bit of decent offense you've had since the past few weeks or so is gone. And I think people just like to, this might be a shock to some people, but people just like to complain. And yeah, they're not going to be sellers because they don't have anything to sell. Will they be buyers? I don't think they're going to be as big a buyers as people would have expected them to be going into the deadline, because I think the one player that the 3 players that they were linked with the most were Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, and Cody Bellinger. Ohtani is off the market as of right now. I doubt they'll trade him, because no one wants to be the guy that trades away the best player that's ever played the game. Juan Soto is another one that would improve the team drastically. I spoke about this on a previous episode, that he would improve the team drastically, but he would require a huge haul of players, and it all comes down to, are the Padres going to deal? Are they going to sell? That might change between now. It's Friday the 28th of July when I'm recording this. By now in the deadline, many things might have changed. And the third one was Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger was a guy that I wanted them to deal for. I thought he made the most sense. He's a left-hander. Left-handers in Yankee Stadium, it's essentially a cheat code. I don't know why they don't do it more often. Certainly power hitters, and he has been a power hitter in recent weeks. It was a deal that probably should have been made when the Cubs were in town for a series before the All-Star break. And what's happened since then is the Cubs have gone on an absolute tear. They've won 8 of their last 10. They're now, again, on Friday the 28th of July, they are back on 500. They are back in contention for the playoffs. They are 4 games off of the wildcard places. They are 5.5 games back off the Central, the top of the Central, with the Brewers and the Reds ahead of them. So they, I think, have come into form at the right time, in the sense of they have gone from, yes, they would be sellers, move Stroman on, move Bellinger on, to almost saying, you know what, hang on a minute. They could do this. They could sneak in. And that's all it takes. All it takes is that chance to sneak in, and they could sneak in. And I think they believe that. He's my bet for like NL Comeback Player of the Year, because he's just been fantastic. And I was reading in The Athletic, they linked him to the Phillies, and that would be a really good fit. However, I just don't see the Cubs trading. I don't think this is a problem for the teams that would be wanting to trade for him, because most good teams would at the moment, given the way he's playing. But I can't see the Cubs getting rid of him that easily. And if they do get rid of him, it will be for quite a hefty sum and a decent price. On that same article in The Athletic, they pitched a trade that I think would be probably the most beneficial / most realistic for the Yankees. And that is the Yankees trade for Jaime Candelario, and the third baseman for the Nationals, and the outfielder for the Nationals, Lane Thomas, for a package of 4 prospects: Richard Fitz, Chase Hampton, Anthony Hall, and Roderick Arias. I think that is the kind of deal that they would make, because it's 4 prospects that the Nationals would want, because they're in their rebuild era. You know, they got their title a couple of years ago, they've broken it down and they're starting again. So they will take prospects aplenty. Prospects and Yankees are not always something that always go well, especially if you're an offensive player. Anthony Hall in low A is an outfielder, and Roderick Arias is a shortstop. He's only 18, so there's plenty of time left. But with the promotion of Anthony Volpe, it looks like they're backing him to be the shortstop for the foreseeable future. And I think, you know, if you're a young shortstop at the Yankees, you're essentially, you either find another position or you will be likely to be traded in whatever situation it may be. There's a world where the Yankees need a third baseman, the Yankees need outfield help, the Nationals will take prospects. This is a deal that would suit both, and it's a deal that is realistic, because I can see Brian Cashman making this kind of deal. He's not the type to go all in this situation. Maybe in the off-season he would. But as long as they, a lot of the links to them have been outfielders. Dylan Carlson of the Cardinals, Randall Grichuk of the Rockies, I hope I pronounced that name. It's one of them names I've never been able to properly pronounce. And Tyler O'Neill of the Cardinals as well. I think the Cardinals were a team that could be fun to look at. Because I can imagine, given their situation, they might look to trade away a couple of players. There's a couple of players that will never go. Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, they're not going anywhere. Don't bother trying. Lars Nootbaar, I think he'll probably stay. But Dylan Carlson, Jack Flaherty, Tyler O'Neill, I think they're players that not only the Yankees should be looking at, but they're players that other teams should be looking at. I'm a big fan of Jack Flaherty. I think he's a top pitcher. I think he's someone that gets a lot of gets a lot of flack online. I'm not entirely sure why. I think there's, in an organisation that has a lot of good pitching and pitchers seem to pitch well for them, I think he could be another good player. Simultaneously, it could end up being like Sonny Gray when he arrived. Top player, really good pitcher, just couldn't cut it in the environment he was in. Maybe it was coaching, maybe it was the whole New York thing. It's a very hostile atmosphere, but, you never know. Some players can handle it, some players can't. That's not a knock on them. It's a very difficult situation to be in. But that is where the Yankees find themselves, and I find it hard to predict where they'll go, how big they'll go, if they go big at all. Because I think this is a turning point in the fans where, whilst they are not an awful team, the situation they find themselves in the AL East and the play they have produced at times gives off the impression, I think, that they're worse than they are. They're a bad team, but they're not awful. You're not over 500 if you're an awful team. Yes, you're bottom of your division, but your division is historically good, with teams that would romp other divisions in any other year. So I don't think it's something to get too down about. It is how it is. It'll be interesting to see what they do. It'll be interesting to see as well what their crosstown rivals are going to do. Because I think the Mets are in a spot of trouble. David Robertson's gone, and according to reports, they have not approached Justin Verlander about any potential trade talks. He has a no-trade clause, and he would need to sign off on any deal before it would be completed. I would hope that if there is any chance of that, Billy would come and talk to me, and that hasn't happened. Yes, that's Justin Verlander talking to Fox Sports in reference to being told by General Manager Billy Epler about a trade. I'm focused on being a Met. I want to win here. Obviously, it hasn't gone according to plan just yet, but I didn't sign a 1-year deal. It would be stupid for the Mets to add more onto their already stacked team. What the Mets need to do is realise how they can readjust that squad and create a better team. I've spoke about this in other episodes before. The Mets have good players, but they are not a good team. Why are they not a good team? They haven't been built like one. They haven't been built like a FIFA Ultimate Team, a Road to the a Diamond Dynasty team. Who is the best player available? Get them. We'll figure it out at another time. I think that they have to sell. They've got free agents, Tommy Pham, Carlos Carrasco, and they're available to be traded, I think. Verlander's going nowhere. You don't spend that much money on him to trade him after 6 months. Because, let's be honest, and this is something that the Padres have to deal with, and it's something I've spoken about between these two teams as well. When you spend that much money in a single off-season, you do not blow it up at the first sign of trouble. You see it through. You've made the commitment to spend. Do not turn that around and bottle it at the first time. Let's be real. Verlander will get a lot of attention because he is Justin Verlander. He is a legend, a certified Hall of Famer, but he's also going nowhere. I'd be stunned if the Mets wanted to deal him. I'd be stunned if he wanted to leave, but I would be equally as stunned. And this is the weird thing about this as well. Who would forget that it's him? Forget that it's this Hall of Fame level player. Who is parting with that much money for a guy who has not? He's in the twilight of his career. It's not a long contract, and hasn't exactly been outstanding this season. This isn't a knock on Verlander's ability. This is more a case of we'll go to another sport. Right? When Tom Brady became available, how many teams realistically would have given him the deal that he wanted? When he left New England before he went to Tampa Bay, I think it was a cert that he was going to Tampa Bay anyway, but let's just, for a moment, assume he didn't want to automatically go to Tampa Bay. He wanted to keep his options open, all of that kind of stuff. How many teams would have parted way with the money that he wanted for a player of his age? I know he's the GOAT, I know all of that, but I can't imagine there was a lot of teams doing that. And even though they all acknowledge that he's amazing and he's one of the best, I think the same applies for Verlander here. A lot of teams, if you asked a lot of executives, a lot of fans, a lot of players, they would almost certainly all say, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to ever do it. How many of them would pay the money for him to come on their team? That's the difference. They're more likely to go to the Tigers for this one. And this moves us on to some of the other buying clubs who are looking at certain players. It's reported that the Orioles, the Astros, and the Rays are eyeing up Michael Lorenzen from the Tigers. And this is the difference between the market at the moment. You look at Verlander, who there's a chance he's available, and I don't think people are taking the chance. Certainly not like they were a couple of years ago before we went to the Astros. They're looking for sensible options. People like Lorenzen. Might be a bit of a step down. He's having the best season of his career, right? 3.58 ERA in a bad team, but in a better team, it might improve. And for those three teams, they're in a position, certainly the Rays, certainly the Orioles, where they'll be looking to strengthen their positions. I think the Astros will almost certainly make the playoffs because they're very good, but also, again, it goes back to the AL. It's a weird league this year. They've not been on top of their game, but they seem to have hit form right now, and they seem to be on fire at the moment. So they'll be on fire for the second half of the season, especially as they've just reactivated Yordan Alvarez and Jose Altuve. They'll be a team that you want to watch. They'll be a team that you won't want to play in the off-season. But the Rays and the Orioles are looking to strengthen their position, and the Orioles have made no doubt about it. Who they want. They want pitching. That's what they're after. I saw a report the other day that they were looking at Ohtani as a rental. It was due diligence calls, let's be honest. And I think everybody knew that they weren't gonna trade him, but they wanted to keep an eye out anyway. They are looking to strengthen their pitching. And the A's and the Rays. Sorry, I keep getting them mixed up because they sound so familiar. The A's and the Rays. Another player that's also interested in from the Rays, amongst other teams, is Eduardo Rodriguez from the Tigers. The Tigers will probably be moving players on because they've not kicked on in any sense, probably in the past 7 years. And it's just a bit. I was watching the Tigers versus the Angels last night, where Ohtani shut out game 1 and then hit 2 home runs in game 2, and there was like 12 people there to see it. No one is turning up for these Tigers games, and it's quite sad. I always find it sad when people don't turn up to games like this because it's, these teams can win if they want to. These teams can compete if they want to, and they've decided not to. The Dodgers are another one that will need some other bits and pieces. They're a team that will be looking to but buy, they'll be looking to cement their position while keeping as much money free for whatever free agent may be available in the summer. And this is the situation that I think the league finds itself in. They all have good hitters. They all have good players who can get on base and can hit home runs, but the pitching side of things is where I think it falls down ever so slightly. There are a few teams that are winning that need one or two bits and pieces to push them over the edge. That is the Orioles, that is the Rays, that is the Dodgers, that is to a lesser extent the Astros, that is to a lesser extent the Texans. Anybody in the AL East, with the exception of the Orioles, they have a lot to compete with. So they may not go one way or another. They may not go sell, they may not go buy, they may just maintain the position they have. Specifically the Dodgers, the Red Sox, specifically the Yankees, where they're not bad enough to be sellers, but they might not be in a position good enough to be all-out buyers. They may add one or two pieces, but enough to supplement them, but not always, not maybe a huge deal. This isn't 2017. This isn't that level of wow factor. The Braves are another team that will probably make no moves because they're already amazing. The Brewers will look to cement their position as the leaders of the Central in the NL, whereas the Reds and the Phillies will look to make up ground as much as they can and cement their own place in the playoffs within the wild card, because Cincinnati are only half a game ahead of Arizona and Miami. Both of Arizona have been on a slump as of late, lost 7 of their last 10, whereas Miami, who again have also been on a slump, losing 8 of their last 10, realise this is the position to go for. This is the time to go in for a playoff place, because the Mets are poor, the St. Louis Cardinals are poor, the Padres are poor. There are teams that are arguably on paper better than them who are poor this season, so make it count. Go in, make a few deals to supplement a decent-ish team that you have. The Cubs again are in a whilst the records are not the same, I've put them in a similar position to that of the Yankees. They are not bad enough to be all-out sellers, but they are also not good enough to make blockbuster trades, because you make a big trade, you might miss out on the playoffs. Again, it's similar to the Angels in that respect. The Angels are a specific and unique situation because of Ohtani. They are 3 games back of the wild card after last night's game against Detroit, the doubleheader against the Tigers. So it's not out of their reach, and it's not out of the realms of possibility that they finally make the playoffs. First time since 2014, I think it would be. But you look at the difference between the two divisions, and the Cubs are 4 games back, and they're 3 spots out. The only teams ahead of them that are the Miami Marlins, Arizona Diamondbacks, and then you go into the actual playoff positions of Reds, Phillies, and the Giants. You look at the wild card, the Angels are behind a over 500 Yankees and over 500 Red Sox, and then you have the Toronto Blue Jays, the Houston Astros, and the Tampa Bay Rays. These are teams that, whilst for example, the Rays have lost 8 of their last 10 and have lost top spot in the East to the Orioles, they are not terrible, and you'll need to be on top of your game to stand a chance, but stand a chance they do. If you are 3 games back of the wildcard places and have won 8 of your last 10, have the best player to ever play the game, have the arguably second best player to ever play the game in the same lineup, hitting back to back, you don't give up. Why would you give up? You keep going. Because let's say you trade Ohtani away. Let's say you get that haul of prospects. Well, what's the point of even signing him in the first place then? What's the point of ever signing anybody? Because you're 3 games back, And what do? You get rid of them. Oh, cool, yeah, I'm sure the Angels fans would be delighted at the amount of players they'd get that wouldn't come close to replicating what he's done. He's leading the home run race in the entire league. He hit, himself, more home runs yesterday than he allowed the Tigers to get any hits in the game previous in the day. We are witnessing something historic with this man. You do not trade him. Yes, you might lose him on a free, but these players do not come around every year. When you have them, you hold on to them. From purely a business perspective, he's looking set to challenge Aaron Judge's home run record from last year. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it. So why, again, purely from a business perspective, think about the tickets that you would sell. Think about the eyes on your team. The Ohtani merchandise that would be sold if he does it. If he does it as an Angel and then leaves to go to somewhere else, he still did it as an Angel. You can still buy Ohtani stuff on his record he made as an Angel. You can still buy Mickey Mantle shirts in the Yankees stores. He hasn't played for them for about 70 years. This is the mix between the sporting side of it and the baseball side of it. If you have a chance of getting into the playoffs with this guy, you take him. If they're in a worse position, if they're bottom of their league, then yeah, trade him. But if you have the chance, the smallest of chances, to keep him and try to get into the playoffs and make potential history happen, you take him. Let's be real. Although I would like to see him come to the New York Yankees, but that is not the point. So it's only a short one today. It concludes this particular episode. Thank you for listening. If you've completed the episode, let me know how you think the trade deadline will go. Let me know what you think of the deals that your team might make. And if you've enjoyed this pod, make sure to subscribe to all the channels. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on all of that. We just love to talk baseball on this podcast because not many English voices do, or should. That being said, thank you for listening. Enjoy the trade season, enjoy the rest of the season. We'll be back next week with another episode looking back on whatever trades have happened between now and the deadline. I'm hoping for a couple of blockbusters because there is nothing better than a flaming hot stove in the baseball season. I've been Tom Scholes, this has been Let's Talk Baseball. Thank you for listening and join us next week when we dissect the trade